When the patch came out, the official multiplayer patch of System Shock 2, that caused some people to play the game again with a friend. Something like that. The co-op mode is not in Bioshock 2 as far as I know.
That's correct.
I don't know, why is that? Wouldn't it be fun?
Partially because our design goals were to take the Bioshock experience, which is extremely lonely, and extend it in the single-player component. And in the multiplayer component, we wanted you to be fighting against intelligent sort of enemies that would far and away exceed the capacity of a splicer in the AI space. And the multiplayer game is at its peak when you are using all these combos just to survive, and you're expressing mastery in a way that a single-player game does not demand. As you said, you're not forced to use a specific tool, whereas in multiplayer, you really have to migrate around your different options.
Yeah, and one of the things that people are really responding very positively to on multiplayer is the team modes. And so that is an opportunity to work cooperatively with friends or just other players and so forth. And we've tried to make sure that the plasmids there can be very complementary. So if we're going into a match and we're on the same team, and I've got a freeze plasmid, and you might want to make sure that you equip yourself with a fire plasmid with Incinerate, so that if we go into a match and Jordan hits me with, and he's also got Winter Blast, and he freezes me, you can put me on fire and that'll melt me. So there's things like that you can explore only in the team modes in multiplayer.
It's a completely different game in some aspects. It's done by a different team, still uses all the graphics and everything. Why do you need a multiplayer mode in a single player game like Bioshock 2? Is it the only chance to keep people interested over time? Does the young audience demand multiplayer?
There were people who said, I really would like to see this in multiplayer. Secondly, I think that nothing about the Bioshock franchise is ever just like, oh hey, let's just do this because it'll
Takes the box.
Yeah. It's more about, we think this is a high quality gameplay experience, and we saw that potential in the multiplayer. As I was saying before, just the fact of you have all these tools at your disposal and all these choices that you can be making, and taking that into an arena where everyone else is doing the same thing, that's just super interesting. In the first game, a lot of people didn't realize this, but the splicers that you fight were all supposed to have powers like you did, and really you were fighting less splicers with machine guns, so it didn't really come across. But if you look at the Houdini splicers, they had a teleport plasmid, and so imagine taking that into gameplay. It was just a really compelling idea, and we thought there was a lot we could do with it, and so we really believed in its potential. And then
there were narrative opportunities as well. That one of the things that interested me about Rapture was the sense of history. And so with the single player, I was pretty sure I wanted to extend the story and show what had happened with this sort of this decay cycle, and who would jump into that power vacuum and use this opportunity. But multiplayer gave me the chance to put the spotlight on an area of Rapture's history that requires lots of people. The year between 1959 and 1960, that preceded the events of the first game, was intense. It's when Rapture fell apart.
Yeah, you hear about it all the time in the logs of the
Yes, exactly. And this is where utopia became dystopia, where paradise became perdition. And these moments require a lot of intelligent splicers running around, fighting each other, competing over matter. What better way to express that than with real live opponents? And because these were the best and the brightest, and you really need to feel like you're competing for it. And you have to use all possible tools of survival in order to be the biggest beast in the jungle. So multiplayer was a natural place to allow the fiction to be reflected by the mechanics, which is something that I think is special to Bioshock.
So is in a third part, which may be coming around in a couple of years, is there the need for a solo mode at all, or could you do it all in a multiplayer environment?
Well, we're not really talking about anything beyond Bioshock 2.
You don't talk about that specific game, but what do you think is the industry headed to?
Well, I'll say, on a very personal level, I love cooperative games. Love them. So I would love to work on a game with a cooperative component. No, but that's just speaking from
of course. But do you think that solo games are in decline, or is that still a huge audience for them?
I think private play is a very deep urge, that people have a need to go to a place where all things revolve around them and
not competing against you.
Yeah, and where I guess it moves at their own pace, and I think that there will be a strong desire to maintain that kind of play in the industry. That said, I do think multiplayer is on the rise, and the ability to take your private play and invite a friend temporarily is going to proliferate. It's going to increase in frequency.
Our multiplayer designer TK Moran is always saying, like, when you go into a single player game, your story is being told to you, but when you go into multiplayer, you're making your own stories in moment to moment, and I do think that there's always going to be a very large audience for both. Like, I love playing multiplayer, but at the same time, like, I'm super excited for single player games with strong story. Playing Dragon Age right now, and I'm just like, I've already put in like 50
you
hours.
have the time for Dragon Age? Last question. There must be one thing about Bioshock 2, a game where you are so involved in and thinking about it all the time. Which you like most? Which is the thing you like most about your own game, Melissa?
That's always hard. I think for me, it's the characters that we created for multiplayer. One of the things that is really interesting about Bioshock 2 is the perspective change, that's expressed across the entire game. In Bioshock 1, you were this stranger coming into Rapture and kind of being like, what the hell happened here? And finding out the whole history. And now you are part of Rapture. You are part of its history. You are an iconic character that you can't imagine the city without. And that's just in single player. On the multiplayer side, we created all these characters, like who would be living in Rapture, and taking these kind of like archetypes, like, hey, what would a housewife in Rapture? What would that be like? And making these cool characters that have their own unique barks. And as you play, like, they'll say something relevant to what you've just done, and it's just really fun.
So the characters.
Yep.
John? For me, it would probably be the choices that the player can make in the single player story, and the fact that those choices are directly relevant to game mechanics. Your behavior while you adopt a little sister informs the way that the story plays out. Your behavior when you come into conflict with these, basically mini boss-like characters, but with a Bioshock flavor, in that they're not just kind of mustache-twirling villains. They're very gray, and you can come to empathize with them. And deciding what to do about them and having all of that play out in the endings is something that took a lot of work, is relatively rare in shooters, but I'm proud of the results.
Oh, and Rocket Spears.
Well, thanks very much indeed.
Oh,
Thank you.
Pleasure.